thank you everyone for joining us today. We're so excited. If you're probably wondering what session you're going to be in today, it's preparing for senior year in college apps during virtual learning. We're going to be sharing a lot of great tools and resources today. But in the meantime, Betsy's going to be adding a question in the chat box. We really want to know, what form of self-care have you been practicing these last couple days, if not even today? But anyhow, please know that this webinar will be recorded and archived. So all of the information, slides, everything is going to be shared with you all after this recording is completed and done. But thank you so much again. And with that said, I do want to just go over some digital community guidelines today. And we want you to use the raise hand feature to indicate that you have any questions or any comments that you may want to share. Or perhaps, or actually before I go into the chat box feature, I do want to talk about raise hand. If for whatever reason this is your first time and you do have a quick little question, you could go down to the taskbar and then you'll see participants. You'll click on your name and then you can raise your hand from there. You can also use the chat box if you have any, comments or thoughts, or even, any questions that you might feel comfortable asking there. And then we just encourage questions and thoughts to create a collaborative environment. We really vibe off of you all, so we're really looking forward to connecting with you. But without further ado, I really wanted to introduce our next guest. Before I do that, I'll introduce myself, and my name is Denise Jovet. I am actually the Senior Manager of Programs with the TGR Foundation and Terry Woods Charity. And I work in the realm of college access and success with students. And, a little bit about myself. I'm actually a first-gen college graduate, and I come from a Latinx household. And I'm just really excited to be with you all today to share resources and just more information on how you can best prepare for senior year. And with that said, I do want to introduce my colleague and co-facilitator and partner for today, Cristina, and I'll make sure to hand it over to her to talk a little bit about.
And just to talk about this and normalize this conversation, okay? And lastly, we'll wrap up the day with some additional tools and resources. Like I mentioned, there's so many good things out there, and we want to make sure that you are aware of them and then also connect to those tools, okay? And before we actually get into all of that, we're gonna take a little pause and just answer this question right here. You have it on your screen. You have to go to this website right here, www.menti.com, and use the code. But we want to hear from you. So just acknowledging like your virtual learning, and we are assuming some of you are experiencing virtual learning. Some of you might be in the class or hybrid model, depending on what location you're in, right? So make sure you can add anything, but what strategies, if any, have worked for you in approaching virtual learning? So what are you doing? Go ahead and share those with us and drop them in the Menti. And then also, if you have a hard time accessing the Menti, go ahead. You can also still use the chat box and I'll call those out, okay? So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that.
And Cristina, while we're waiting for everyone to insert their answers, I'm kind of curious and I want to pick your brain. What strategies, we're all on virtual learning, whether we're in school or not. Like what's been something that's been working for you?
Actually, calendars are my best friends right now. That and lists. I love lists because you can cross things out, and like a little check mark brings so much joy to my heart. Like a little check makes me so happy. But I have like 3 calendars right now. I have my work calendar. I have my school calendar because I need to do homework. And then I also have my personal calendar that has like appointments and birthdays and when I have to pay my bills because I like electricity. So I make sure that I have like a couple things, and that might be too many, but it helps me. And I think the last thing is making time to update my calendars. So I actually have like about 30 minutes each week to just focus on my calendars. And I'm very fond of them. So I saw that as someone added that calendars are a part of theirs. Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing some great stuff right now. Ooh, keeping a mini whiteboard to write my assignments. Whoever wrote that, we're on the same page. I don't know if you could see it, but I have my background. But at some point, I'll take my background so you guys can see it. But wow, what are there any comments that stand out to you, Cristina?
I see here on the chat too, like the checklist. Thank you, Betsy, for validating me on that. But the planners are big, right? Taking notes is a big one. Let me see what else I have. Oh, I like this, my phone alarms. That is a secret sauce. Like, if you're not using phone alarms and you have, like, you know, you kind of forget things, so you need a little reminder form. I have everyone on phone alarms right now. Even some of the student staff that works for me at UCI, I'm like, you need to put a phone alarm. And so if you're not using those, like, think about those, because you always have your phone with you. So those are good ones. Another one that you see, Denise?
Oh, I think this is something that we just need to bring up, and we're actually going to talk about it later on throughout the presentation, is actually staying connected with friends. I think that we're so connected to like our learning, and sometimes it can get a little exhausting that we're forgetting to also make time to connect with our friends and not talk about anything college or homework related, which I think is very, very important. So I just had to highlight that. But yeah, Cristina, these are some awesome comments. So perhaps maybe we should talk about why we even ask this question and move on to the next slide.
Yes, and actually I wanted to bring up one that's going to connect to college, and that's office hours. So when I saw that teachers were going to be using office hours as you're learning virtually, I was really excited, because that's a really good cultural shift for you. Knowing to go to office hours and checking in with your teachers when they have these like live times is something that is expected or recommended when you go to college. So even though you might have classroom time with them, professors will also host office hours, and it might be in person or virtual if we continue with that, but that's another really good tool when you're a college student. So if you're not using office hours or you don't know what they are, make sure to follow up with that at your school with your teachers, because that's going to be a really cool cultural social thing that you do when you're at college. Okay, so let's start with the presentation, and let's start about what is actually the college process going to look like. Okay, so there's a couple steps, and one of the reasons why I was really excited to be on this call today is that anytime that I'm approached with a task, and it could be like a little task, or it can be a more substantial task, right? I get a little nervous, right? And then I feel like I see the whole big picture, but what has really helped me navigating things is like looking at baby steps. So I'm really excited about this process, because one of the things, if you are in a similar boat as I am, is that we're going to break things down into smaller steps. And those smaller steps are going to make this a lot more manageable. And you giving yourself time to work through these things is going to make this whole process seem a lot more feasible. So one of my favorite quotes, and you can write this down or remember it, but I live by this. I literally have to tell myself this every day, is everything seems impossible until it's done. So seeing like this whole college process might seem like it's going to be such a huge task, but it's going to get done. And we're going to be here to support you through it, okay? So there's a couple things that you have to keep in mind, and these are the categories or some of the concepts that are going to go into the college application process, okay? The first thing is identifying your college app. Is it an individual school? Is it a system, for example, Common App? Or are you applying to a lot of schools with one application, or do you have to go through each individual school? That's number one, right? Identify the app. The other thing is grades and challenging courses, kind of taking like acid of those and seeing where you're at. And usually the best thing to do here is to have an updated transcript. And that transcript will usually have your grades, what classes you took. If you see a mistake in your transcript, like you got a different grade, you want to, communicate with your teacher, your counselors, to make sure that you have a very accurate transcript, because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to submit to universities, okay? A lot of what you're going to do in the next couple months when you're completing applications is self-reporting. So you're just typing in your grades that you got, but at the end, you have to show proof, okay? So make sure that transcript's up to date. Moving on, testing, and I think someone dropped a question about testing, so we'll go ahead and address that. But across the nation, testing is still being used but it might be being used differently, okay? So I think that someone's asking about the UCs in regard to testing, and that's going to be, I think, one of the things that we're going to wait till the end to kind of go into detail, just because it's going to be really specific to the UC system. But overall, if you have the opportunity to take a test and you want to report your scores, the first thing that you have to do is open that account up and look at your scores, okay? I know that sometimes you are hesitant to look at your scores, but go into College Board and open up your accounts to make sure that you have your scores for either subject test, SAT, or any other test that you took, okay? One thing that I want you to think about also is to start investigating if you're going to need letters of recommendation. So this might depend by school, by system. 2 things with letters of rec. Figure out if you need them, and if you do need them, start making lists of who you might contact for those letters of rec, okay? And moving on to extracurricular activities, one thing that I'm going to recommend is that if you want to make a list, you can just like brainstorm a list of all your activities if you don't have one yet. But if you have a resume, that's also a good tool. You don't need a resume when you're filling out college applications, but it's sometimes like a good list for you to look at what you've done and keep in mind. I want you to focus, whenever you're writing about extracurricular activities, I want you to focus on what you accomplished, what you learned. That's going to be the biggest thing when you're talking about your activities, okay? Sometimes when you write about activities, you might also have the opportunity to write some personal statements. So make sure that you know if your college requires them. If they do, it might depend like by campus or by system on what that looks like, okay? So just keep an eye out for those. In addition to writing those college personal statements, sometimes you'll need to write supplemental essays or have like like statements that relate to each individual school, or even like writing samples sometimes. So you have to kind of look into those to see if your school requires them. And lastly, some schools might even include an interview in the admissions process. So prepping for those interviews is going to be really important. We don't expect you to just show up for them, but there's going to be some legwork included into those interviews process, okay? So that's kind of like a list, and I'll go back to the SAT and the testing at the end, just to address it very specific to the UC system, okay? So what should you be doing right now? There's a, we didn't want to overwhelm you with a huge list, but these are the couple things that you should be doing right now to kind of keep you on track, okay? And the first one relates to testing, right? Because 2 things happen right now. Some across the state, in California, but across the nation, some campuses are getting rid of testing, so you don't need it for admissions, okay? That's happening. So you have to kind of investigate at your specific schools what's going on with that. And the other thing that's happening is that a lot of college made some modifications for COVID-19 because testing became limited, right? So you have to kind of investigate, see what's going on. It's just a COVID-19 modification, or if it's maybe an admissions process. But we're gonna show you some websites where you can find that information out, okay? We want you to start finalizing your list. Probably at the end of this month, you should have a very strong list because deadlines are coming up, okay? And so we want you, the third point here is deadlines. Make sure you have your deadlines written down. These were the calendars. That's why I like the month view, because you can see, okay, this month, these are my deadlines. And we encourage you to make note of your college deadlines, but also scholarships, okay? Because sometimes admissions deadlines can also be connected to scholarship deadlines, and you don't want to miss out on any of the monies, okay? Get your free money, so make sure you write those deadlines down, okay? And keep in mind that even though we're in a virtual experience, just like today's workshop, there's so many other opportunities for you to connect to college access programming. Workshops, webinars, handouts, panels, there's so many opportunities. So depending on where you at and what you need, make sure you look for those. And again, today we're gonna have some of those tools available for you. And lastly, find your support group, right? I think someone mentioned that they like to connect to friends or they like to connect to teachers. Make sure that you know who your support team is going to be. It could include family members, it could include school officials, it could include like college access programs like the ones that you have around your school, your community, or even like right now in the national level, anything that you can connect that will be like your key mentors. And hint, these people might be the ones that are going to be writing your letters of rent too. Okay, and I do want you, even though you might feel really comfortable with your family members, or if you have maybe like an older sibling or a parent that went to college, I still want you to really focus or connect with someone that's a professional, because things, you know, especially right now with all the modifications to COVID-19, things change. Okay, so please reach out to someone that you're connected to at the school level or any other college access program. Okay. And then moving on to the next slide. So we actually have like a little timeline for you. We're only going to focus in October, November, and December, because those are the months that are coming up. And after that, when the spring comes around, we'll have other resources to kind of give you an idea of what you should be doing in the spring, okay? But for starting in October, right? So starting in a couple weeks, which is my favorite season. I already have my Halloween sweater ready to go. So I'm really excited about October this year. I've never been this excited about Halloween. So starting October, make sure you start working on your financial aid applications. So at the federal level, we have the FAFSA, and then at the state level or local level, you might have other applications, okay? But just make sure that you start working on your financial aid forms. That's really important. Like I mentioned, get your money, okay? Start working on your applications. They might not be due, and they might not even be like submittable, right? But they're open. Most of them are open, so you can just start typing away, right? A little bit, you know, a little bit of time every day. So make sure you start working on those, okay? And the other thing you want to start doing as you're working on the actual applications online, you want to make sure that you're working on your statements, on your extracurricular activities, if that's just like a list and getting down some information, or if you need to figure out a resume for any of those, okay? And lastly, for October, we really want you to start connecting with your counselors or anyone else that's going to support you in this process, right? So whatever the process to meeting with them, if you have to send them an email, if they have any other form of you meeting with them, make sure that you're meeting with them, because they're going to be the greatest tool. One of the greatest tools for you. Like, we know like what the college expectations are, but sometimes they have insight on what the school is doing and what you should be mentioning from the school, okay, and those college apps. For November, we want you to start seeing what financial aid documents you need to submit per college. Sometimes you need to submit additional forms. Submit them, right, and focus on deadlines. Financial aid offices are serious about their deadlines. Let me tell you, they're so serious. If you miss it by a day, they might not be able to process it, right? Because these are federal guidelines. So they're serious about those deadlines, okay? One of the points for November is to complete your college applications by deadlines. This is gonna be really important, okay? As a notice, because of everything that's going on, not just like COVID-19, global pandemic, but also some of the social justice movements that are happening, colleges are being super flexible. They are trying their best to make sure they meet you halfway. But like today, we're gonna cover a little bit about advocacy. That means you need to voice like a concern. If you're not gonna be able to meet a deadline, you need to send someone an email. If you need us to help you draft an email, or sometimes what I used to do is sit next to you while you were making a phone call. If you need us to help you in that process, hit us up, right? Because we want to make sure that you actually like reach out before you miss a deadline, okay? They're being flexible, but doesn't mean that there's not going to be any consequences if you do miss any deadlines, okay? And last thing for November is that even though we might be virtual and you can't physically go to a campus, there are still virtual opportunities. At least as an example for the UC system and the Cal State system here in California, every campus has some type of virtual experience where you can learn about the campus, okay? And then just keep in mind that you're just applying right now, and then the springtime, other things might be options as you're making a decision, okay? So just keep that in mind. For December, again, send any required documents before the deadlines, but make sure that your financial aid is good to go before deadlines, and then continue your scholarship search. Sometimes in November, that's when I see students, like they're done with most of their college apps, and that's when they spend a little bit more time on financial aid, okay? So that's kind of like the timeline. If you have any questions about that timeline, make sure you drop it into the chat box, okay? So these are some tips that we have for staying organized. I know that for me, that was one of the biggest thing in college. And when you look at how the success for college students, it's not always about, oh, are you smart or not smart? Do you have the skills to be college? But it's usually study habits. That's what gets you all, okay? So as high school students, it's a skill you have to develop, okay? So just as people have spent a lot of time in like learning how to lift weights, right? Or rollerblading is super in right now. I don't know how to balance my body, so I can't do that. But these are all skills that you have to practice. So organizing, being organized is another thing that you have to practice at, okay? And I'm telling you from personal experience, it can get better. It really can, but you have to practice, okay? So establish a routine. Even though we're all virtual, or some of you are virtual, you still have a routine. Like, what does that mean for you, okay? And if, again, 15 minutes a day typing away your college app will make it seem less scarier, and it will actually contribute. So in a couple months, you will have a completed application, right? Use your calendars. A bunch of you mentioned that you are doing either paper or digital. And also I'm gonna throw in the phone alarms here. Those are great, those can work, okay? And then depending on what kind of access you have to your counselors, schedule meetings with them, right? So if you can see them once a month or every 2 weeks, or if they're limited in how many times they can see you, make sure that you are maximizing that opportunity and seeing them as much as you can, and getting all your questions answered, okay? And if you have any tips in regards to additional organizing, drop those in the chat also, because we want to hear from you. One tip or resource that we wanted to highlight is College Essay Guide. And you can follow them. They have a bunch of their information right here. But I like Excel sheets because I like lists, right? And these lists are like templates. So they're already color coded, which is like super cool when you have lists. They're in Excel, and it will kind of help you keep track of how to kind of format and think about your college list, okay? So when we sent this website out, these are all going to be links, so you can actually will be able to click and go to that. And if you don't have like a list right now, I'm going to encourage you to use this one, right? So by the end of this month, you should have your list, and this is going to be a really good one, okay? So that you can use. They have a lot of free resources, so make sure you do that one. The next example that we have is a college app checklist. I really appreciate this checklist because it already has everything. Like, you don't have to even guess what you need, right? It has all the information that you need to require, like when's the deadline, is there going to be an interview, what are the tests required, do you need to send scores to the school? This is going to be a super clean list for you to help you, and the more that you're organized, the easier this process is going to be, okay? And one of the last resources that we want to mention in this section that's actually going to help you stay updated with the most updated information, because I feel like things are changing almost day to day, right? So we have a really cool website, and this is a website that you can keep track of what's happening in regards to admissions, right? So you want to know, like, maybe deadlines are being extended or deadlines are moving up, right? We want to make sure that you stay connected, so you can follow it on NACAC, and they basically collect all the information about a bunch of public and private schools to make sure that you have the most updated. And I'm gonna kind of give you like a reminder here. There's so much information, but there's also a lot of misinformation. So when you're looking for college information, we really encourage you to go to these types of websites where it's like good information, and they're gonna give you the most accurate instead of you finding it in other websites. So this is a reliable website that we encourage you to look into, okay? And I'm gonna go back to advocacy, and I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about what that means overall, okay? So in this digital world, we realize that you need to be a little bit more vocal, right, about what your needs are. And there's a couple things, a couple ways that you can do that, right? So one of the things that is gonna really help you when you navigate college is also going to be able to ask for help. And that's really, really important, okay? And we want you to ask for help before it's too late. right? So like waiting till the day before the deadline, that's a little too late. So anytime that you need to ask for help or develop those advocacy skills, we want you to do it, the sooner the better, okay? So what does that look like for you right now? So one of the first tips that we have is reaching out. Asking for help can be done through a phone call. Remember, we still have phones. You can still use a phone. You can email somebody if your school has a portal, whatever portal that is, a Google Classroom for the counselors, whatever page that is, utilize it. That's why it's there. Always ask for help. And then make sure that you follow up. That's really important. Because sometimes you'll have, like, at least for me, sometimes it takes courage to ask questions. So I'll build up all this courage to ask a question, and then I'll get a response back, and it might not be the response I wanted, and I'll be like, oh, whatever, I'm just gonna ignore this now. But no, follow up, right? Make sure that you have this conversation, that you keep it going until there's a resolution, okay? We don't want things being left halfway. We wanna make sure that we complete whatever process you need help with, okay? And another thing with building your network is gonna be social groups. Your friends and your other seniors, and maybe even friends that were older that already went to college, are going to be a huge asset for you. So hit them up, create a group chat that helps you keep yourselves accountable, right? Like, hey, Denise, have you turned in your worksheets? Denise, don't forget, right? Or anyone, if you're that like person, if you're sometimes they're like the mom of the group, like it's okay to be that person, right, Denise? Like I had
I'm that person that people have to remind to do things like, hey.
Oh, okay, well, we're both in trouble because I needed reminders too. But there's always that one friend, you know, sometimes like they're coded as bossy. They're not bossy, they're just like helping you all out, okay? So make sure you have at least one of those folks, and you know that you help out and keep yourselves accountable. I see this when sometimes people are trying to be like healthier. They'll like post it on social media, like, oh, this is what I'm doing. So that's something that you can also show that, you know, that this is what you're at and this is what you want to do, right? So putting that out into the universe and vocalizing that will help you and yourself and others be held accountable for that, whatever goal that is, okay? And then the last thing is that check your social media. Like if you're already interested in a college or like whatever social media programs, college access programs have social media, connect to those. Because like at least for myself, I follow a bunch of college access programs on Instagram because I like to know what's going on, like especially with so many things kind of going back and forth right now. Those are sometimes the quickest, most accurate ways. So if you can follow the Instagram of the colleges that you're interested, they usually have an admissions page. Like so, like UCI has an admissions page on for just Instagram, just for admissions. For housing is another big one because that's changing so much. Like, are you going to be able to live on campus or not? Those Instagrams are usually some of the first place I go to find information, because sometimes websites are good, like they're cool, yeah, all right, a website, but I don't have time to read all that. I need a post, right? So follow those Instagrams. That's gonna really help you with those. Okay?
Give me the 2 seconds, right?
Yeah, I just need a little story that tells me what's going on. So follow those. I love Instagram. I feel like that's one of the easiest ways to find information, but you have to find the appropriate pages. And if you need to, I'm gonna put it out there, if you need to separate your social life from your college life, create another account that's just college stuff that you will check. Also, don't forget about it. You know how you'll have all these fake accounts, burner accounts? Make sure you maybe just create one for college stuff that you remember to go and check. But the key here is that you actually go and check it, okay? Don't just abandon that account, okay? So those are all like,
Christina.
I'm sorry?
That's a great tip.
Yeah, I have a couple accounts. You know, I have different interests, so I want to make sure my feeds represent that. Feeds are important. Keep positive, appropriate feeds going for whatever accomplishment you're trying to get through, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and on that same kind of positive note and about wellness, I'm gonna send it over to Denise, and she's gonna go over a couple other things.
Thank you, Christina. I love all of the tips that you provided to our students or an educator that's on this call today. But you know what? Before I get started, I'm pretty sure it's been a very hectic day for some of you, if maybe a lot of us. Let's take a deep breath right now, and I'll count to 3, and then we'll all do it together, and then hold it for about 3 seconds, and then just let everything that's stressing you out. Okay, so let's do it together. I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. Breathe out. Okay. All right, so this is just very, very important. And I think that, Christina and I can really agree that social and emotional support is very important, especially in these moments. We have a lot of high school seniors that we're working with, and we understand that every day is kind of a struggle for some of you because perhaps maybe your learning environment is not ideal, or maybe you have like 10 other people in your house and you're just trying to concentrate on your virtual learning, and maybe it's just difficult, and perhaps to some extent it's kind of taken a little bit of a toll on your emotional your emotional health, and this is just very important to address. If you've never heard of mindfulness, mindfulness is definitely a tool that is really being brought out, especially during this time. And if you want to learn more about it and how you can use this technique, I really encourage you to check out apps like Headspace, as well as Calm. There's also a website called the Greater Good Science Center, which is actually based out of UC Berkeley. And they provide a lot of tools and resources for students and educators on how to approach this specific topic and how to really incorporate it in your life. And look, I'm just going to be super real. I think right now more than ever, these are tools that we all really need. It doesn't matter if you're a 16 or 17-year-old in high school or a 34 or 35-year-old, doing college advising with students. It's just really important for us to take care of this. Exercising your mind and body. That's why we actually asked the question earlier, like, what type of self-care are you really practicing? Because these are very important conversations to have. Given what Christina went over regarding the fall timeline, also going over things that you should be doing now in your college applications, these are also things that you should be doing and incorporating on your daily planners. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit more about like exploring new ways to express yourself. And with that said, I also don't want you all to feel like, oh my God, I have to learn like 1,000 new things because everybody else is trying to learn a new skill. It's okay if you're not. Like, let that go and don't compare yourself to other students. Each person is an individual and each person is so different. And, I feel like when I talk to my students, I try to remind them that that you're all very unique and special in your own way. And at the end of the day, you have to worry about you. You can't worry about what the next person is doing. And you can't really compare because everyone's situation is so different, right? The other thing we're going to be talking about is considering free or low-cost mental health services. I think mental health is something that is very important, especially in our under-resourced communities and POC communities. I feel like sometimes talking about mental health can be a little bit of a taboo. When I say a little bit, that's a huge understatement. So I want you all to feel very comfortable, at some point or another, that everyone to some extent needs some sort of help. And with that said, I wanted to introduce a few resources that I find very helpful. I actually use this app myself. It's called a Reflection app. You can actually, if you do have a smartphone, you can download it there. Or if you have access to the internet, you're able to actually look it up on the web browser, and you can go to reflection.app. Essentially what you see here is, say you're like on the go and you're just feeling some type of way. Sometimes it's kind of hard to like find your journal and just grab it, like sometimes we don't have access to it right away. And this is just a way for you to actually jot down whatever thoughts you're feeling. For example, just the other day, I was feeling a little bit frustrated with a certain situation that I was dealing with, and I just took a quick little moment and I just jotted those feelings down. And you could actually literally put, this is a highlight in my day, or this is a low light. A low light meaning like this was a challenge. And what's really cool that it actually organizes your thoughts and your and so forth, by date. but also it makes you reflect. It makes you reflect on like where you are now and where you were back then, and perhaps where you will be in the future. I also like this app, especially if we have any students that are not seniors on this call, or perhaps if you're watching it on our YouTube channel. Just know that this particular tool could possibly actually help you with writing a personal statement or for your college applications. So that could be a connection, because a lot of the time students kind of forget about that piece, like, I don't know what to talk about. But if you use an app like this, you could actually reflect on moments that you've had, within the last few years in high school, or even during the last 6 months, or 7 months. How long has it been these days, during this pandemic? So it's just a great tool. I really encourage you all to, check it out when you have a moment. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, we talked about free or low-cost mental health services. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, just because, growing up in a Mexican Latino household, like, it's not something that it's really talked about, and seeking help is actually, it can be like literally life changing. I know that it's done a lot of changes in my life, and I continuously reflect on this. So this is just something I want to put out there. So the YMCA, most across the nation, you might have one locally, and a lot of the YMCAs may offer free to low-cost mental health services. So you might want to check out their website if this is something that you're really like interested in, or you really need support. The other website I wanted, or even social accounts if you may want to follow them, it's called Active Minds. So I actually was exposed to this particular resource by some of our college scholars that we have in our program, and they talked about having these as different chapters at their respective college. But the cool thing is that high schools also have Active Minds as well. And what Active Minds does is actually really make sure, they talk about mental health, and it's a lot of like, peer-to-peer support. So this is another website and another resource that I would really encourage you to check out, and perhaps even follow on their social media. Last but not least, this is something that I think is really important, not just for yourself, but for anyone that you might feel like really needs the support and the help. There's also the crisis text line, and they're pretty much available 24/7 to provide support, and it is free, so just check it out. You could follow them on Twitter or Instagram, or just simply go on their website. I know that you can message them on Facebook, but I could only assume that most of our students are not on Facebook these days. But again, you can even text them if you have a phone available to you. So, this is just something very important to know. And then also for our students, for like our POC students, if you identify within that community, there's also websites like LatinX Therapy. I know they're really huge on Instagram. So if that's something that you're really interested in following and checking out what resources they have, a lot of the time they actually have very low cost webinars, and sometimes they will be free as well. So you can check those out. There's also Brown Girl Therapy, and then Melanin and Mental Health, which is another great resource. And then last but not least, there's also the National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network that you can check out. So if at any point, maybe it's you or maybe it's a friend, these are some resources that you can definitely direct to them. And then again, I know it's a lot of resources that we're sharing, so don't feel overwhelmed like, oh my God, I have to keep note of all of this. Just as a reminder, we're gonna be sharing all of this information after our session. And another thing that, aside from emotional and social support, I think something that we just felt the need to address is that technology and academic support. We understand that perhaps, maybe it's not necessarily you on this call right now, but maybe you have friends that kind of struggle with this piece, and not having technology access. I would encourage any student or anyone that's struggling with this piece to actually check their cable and or phone providers. I would say, like, just an example, I know like T-Mobile is currently providing like free hotspots for students. I'm not too sure how they go about verifying that process, but that's just something to look into, and it's just something to know for our students. In addition, this might not necessarily apply to every single student, but I would say that it's worth you actually checking with your school district. So whatever school district you actually belong to, some school districts are actually providing free or hotspots to students, and they're also providing perhaps a laptop. So if you haven't checked in already with your school district, make sure you do so. Or perhaps you might want to encourage a friend that is also, like, you know, having technology challenges as well. And then let's be real, we know that doing homework these days is so different than than just, you know, earlier this year. I know a lot of students have been telling me that perhaps, like, you know, just even trying to pay attention in a virtual class is just so different, especially, you know, if you're not vibing, you know, with the session itself. But virtual tutoring hours are so important and so crucial. So we're actually going to be sharing a link, which again it's actually embedded in this presentation, where it has a list of free tutoring resources that you can check out while you're doing remote learning. The other thing that I'm going to talk about, and I think we've kind of mentioned like 1,000 times, is really like creating a schedule. I think it's like overstated, but it's also very understated, because, you know, sometimes you don't understand like the power of what creating a schedule can do for you. I mean, I don't know if you can really see, but I actually do have a whiteboard with all of my to-dos, and this is for the day. I actually just try to look at my to-do list for the day, because when I actually see it for the rest of the week or the month, for me personally, sometimes it overwhelms me, and it's like I gotta break it up in days so I can like just be like, okay, I checked it off, I'm good with that piece. Okay, maybe this you know, part of my to-do list wasn't as crucial to get done today, I'll move it on for tomorrow and I'll leave it on the whiteboard. So that's just a tip, and I'll talk a little bit about a bullet journal as well. The other thing too is, I know many of you guys are looking for just connection with your friends. I know that sometimes it's important to maybe you're playing Scribbler with them online, maybe you're playing some online games, but maybe you do need that academic support, and maybe you're taking that AP calculus class and then you're like, oh my God, this class is like, this is too much for me. It's okay, reach out to your friends and see if anyone has already taken the class, or maybe they're feeling really comfortable. Maybe you can start a virtual study group. It does not have to be an hour's worth of a study group. You can maybe just allot maybe like 20 minutes every week, just so you can feel like you're on top of things. And again, all of these resources are going to be shared, so don't fret on that. But perhaps you've never heard of a bullet journal, but this is a very creative way to actually go about doing your to-do list, perhaps, you know, taking note of whatever assignments that you have going on. But I actually provided a YouTube link to how to go about a DIY bullet journal. This is actually something that one of my students, actually former students, alumni now, she actually mentioned this to me, and she's like, it's been so helpful for me because I'm a very creative person, but then it's been hard to kind of keep track of everything I have, and it's very like soothing for me to just, you know, like use different colors and make sure that I arrange my schedule and so forth. So check this out. I think this is something that may help you. I know it might not be for everyone, but it's a suggestion. And then this tool was actually introduced by one of my colleagues. Her name's Betsy. It's actually called Notion. And, you know, I know that we all use, Christine, I think you mentioned that you use like 3 different platforms to kind of keep everything, you know, try to keep track of everything. Well, with Notion, you could actually have everything all in one website. And pretty much you can have your weekly agenda, you can have your list of tasks, you can have your schedule. So if you're not a paper type of person, or even whiteboard type of person, maybe Notion is the tool that you may want to use. And this is just like a quick little reference point of what it may look like. And this could be used by students and professionals. Like, it doesn't really matter like what your role is. This is a really cool tool that you can use. It was so funny. I was just on a call with one of my former students this morning too, and you know, they were talking about going to grad school, and I just mentioned this to them. They're like, "Oh, okay, like I didn't even realize." I was like, "Well, I didn't even know until it was mentioned to me, and I explored it." So again, this is a great tool. Check it out. You can create a free account, so just in case you're wondering.
I think Denise, just going back into like the planning, I think one of the things that I've learned in my process and my journey to being more organized is that I used to be labeled as a procrastinator, and I felt hurt. Let me see a show of hands or a little reaction if anyone else here feels like they're a procrastinator or has been labeled a procrastinator. Probably not, because you're all scholars, but I used to be considered a procrastinator, and it wasn't until I was like a full-blown adult that I realized that I wasn't a procrastinator. I was just anxious. I would just be, when I had like a big task, I would just like be overwhelmed by it, so I would delay it till like 30 minutes before it was due. And then I would get myself into like this just like never ending cycle of being anxious about turning something in and then turning it in late and then being more anxious and just keep being anxious person. So it's been a journey to be organized. Definitely wasn't a skill that I had wrapped when I was a college student even. It took me a couple years. But now that I'm more organized and I have my 3 calendars, I feel like my wellness has gone up like a bunch of degrees, right? So for any of you that you maybe like don't have, you know, what you helps you the most, don't stop exploring. Don't give up on being your most organized, authentic self, because it will reduce some of the insecurities, some of the concerns, or even like some of the delaying of getting things done. Not because you're procrastinators, but because you're learning how to manage these projects, right? And guess what? People get graduate degrees and certificates on program management. So it is not something you are born with. It is definitely a skill. Don't give up. Try from a procrastinator in rehab. I promise you it can't get better, and it is brighter on this side.
And Christina, like apparently what you're saying has totally resonated with the group, because some people are in the chat and they're like, "Oh my God, that's me." And Megan brought up a great point.
Oh yeah.
Perfectionist procrastinator. Oh my gosh, don't even get us started.
Done.
This is like a whole other session right here. But thank you guys so much for you know, raising your hand or commenting on the chat, because it's so real. But yeah, thanks for adding that piece. I think it's very important. Another thing that I actually wanted to mention is that, as I mentioned, I work with the TGR Foundation, and if maybe this is your first session with us, we're a nonprofit organization that really helps students in college access and STEM related activities. But one of our biggest things is we really want to provide virtual support to students. So we're actually offering free, no cost online virtual academic support if they are TGR Learning Lab members. So if you want to check this out, again, the link will be provided on the slide, and you'll kind of actually see the different dates and the time frames on there. So again, thank you so much for even checking this out. I have a few more tools to share, but academic support is very important right now, okay? And with that said, I do want to answer some of you guys' questions shortly, but before I do that, I want to share one last tool, and that's actually our TGR EDU Explore website. It's tgreduexplore.org. We have a number of resources there for students, for families, and educators, so if you want to check that out, feel free to do so. And actually, I'm going to take this time to just give you takeaway tips, and then we're going to answer any questions that you have. So if you have any questions right now while I'm talking, feel free to pop them in the chat. I see Stacy, like you want to hear more about the SAT, and I definitely want to address that a little bit, you know, in more detail for students, because I know there's a lot of like just feeling around that particular topic. So again, I think this is, I know it's easier said than done, and I know sometimes students don't feel comfortable asking for help, but this is a moment where you need to reach out and let, you know, let people like us know, like any college advising mentors or teachers or counselors know, like, hey, like I'm really struggling with this, or I'm having a hard time just kind of like having things be tangible in my college process right now. Again, feel free to reach out to us. I know Christina and I will be sharing our emails. I'll actually be sending a full-on email with the recording, the slides, and our email addresses so you guys can have them. Also, try to stay updated, but also find balance to stay disconnected. If you've been literally in front of your computer for like literally 2 or 3 hours straight, if not longer, you need to literally schedule like 15-minute breaks for you to just like stand up, get up, and stretch. Or, you know, just take little deep breaths like we just did earlier. That is very, very important because it makes you feel like you're in the moment, you're in the now. Talking to your family and friends. You know, again, virtual support system is so real right now. And if, you know, whoever you live with at home, sometimes we're so good at hiding like our feelings and our emotions, but sometimes it's good for us to just let it all out. And, you know, try to choose those people and who are those people in your life. And last but not least, this is super overstated, I know, but again, make sure you're still practicing it. Take it a day at a time. I think when you're looking at like, oh my God, 2-3 years from now, to be honest with you, so many things can change 2-3 years from now. Let's just stay in the moment, and what is it that we can control in this very present time. And with that said, I know Christina and I are so thankful to have had you guys on the call. We're going to use this time for questions. And Christina, I'm going to actually address Stacy's question. Christina talked about this a little bit earlier about the SAT. Here's the thing. For testing, unfortunately, there's no like umbrella that covers every single college and university nationwide, because this is really going to vary. But what I will say is that I think that this should definitely be a personal decision for students, because every student's situation is very unique. And what I mean by that, please make sure that if you cannot find a testing site, and literally a testing site is not even available to you like 50 miles out, do not go out of your way to try to make that work. Again, it's not to stress you out. It's like you shouldn't have to like worry about like, oh my God, like I have to figure out someone in my family has to drive me like 60 miles just so I can take the test. Do not worry about that. I think at that point, you need to contact, once you've created your college list, you need to contact those colleges. And if you're unable to, you know, even get a seat for the SAT or even ACT, dude, I think you should not worry about it. Again, I think this is where you should really consult like maybe your guidance counselor and see what other opportunities there may be, or a college access advisor. But I know specifically for like my closest students, I'm letting them know, do not stress yourselves out for this piece, especially because so many colleges are going test optional. And at that point, it's like, okay, let's try to focus on what else is there in the application itself. So I don't know, Christina, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Very similar. I'm going to just right off the bat reinforce that we want to focus on all the other factors of the application. Speaking to the UC system, there's 14 admissions factors. Testing was or is maybe one of them. There's 13 other things that are considered in admissions. So I want you to focus on those 13 other things. I'll drop the website where you can figure out where those other 13 factors are, okay? Specifically to UCI, I'm going to drop it in the chat. This is directly from the website, okay? Admissions.uci. This is UCI specifically is not going to be looking at testing at all for admissions, okay? So even if you took it and you submit it because you want to, they're not gonna even look at it. So just at UCI, because I thought that was a specific question, but in regards to testing overall, not required for any UC campus. And I'm telling you, most of the campuses are really moving away from it at all. So here, so it's gonna be per campus if they use it at all, but I really encourage everyone to think about all the other factors that make you competitive applicants. I think we've been it's been really ingrained in our mind, and we have it right here in the back of our head that testing is gonna get us in or it's gonna keep us out. And I can tell you 100% at the UC system, and a lot of campuses are moving this way. Testing is not the one factor that's gonna make you eligible or denied admissions, okay?
Yeah.
So I want you to accept that in your hearts. Accept it.
I know, let's accept it all right now. Okay, we're accepting.
Right? The UC system in a lot of campuses, I can't speak to 100% because, people be doing their own thing, but accept it because that's going to reduce so much stress.
Yes.
Unnecessary stress. You just obviously look individually per campus to see what's happening, but especially with COVID-19 modifications, it's going to be really, really hard to impossible to get a testing. Don't risk your health for something that's not required.
Yes, exactly. And Christina,
I hope that answers your question, Stacy.
Yeah, and Sergio, I think Sergio kind of had a little bit, not necessarily specific to testing, but Sergio's asking, how is the UC system? And for those of you that are not from California, the UC system is the University of California college system that we have here. But they're asking specifically, have they specifically make accommodations for incoming students?
Are you speaking to the fall 2020 class or the fall 2021? So maybe the next year when they're coming in, or this year?
Yeah, let's have Sergio maybe clarify. Yeah, next year.
Okay, so for fall 2021, when all the seniors right now would start college, we don't know yet. Honestly, I don't think they even made an announcement for spring, so next term. So I would say it's really gonna depend on public health. And right now we are at a very small capacity to living students on campus for students living on campus. But in regards to admissions modifications or accommodations, is no testing required for admissions, right? And then in regards to pass grades and no pass or credit, no credit, they did accept all pass or credit courses regardless of grades. Regardless, it didn't require a grade. It could be a pass or a credit. And a lot of things that, and I know Denise and the team will cover this, and I do encourage you to get more insight, is how to complete your application if you've been significantly impacted by the global pandemic or the social movements. So if you feel in your heart that you need to speak on this because there's a significant impact, reach out to your team, reach out to your adults. I don't know, you know who your adults are. You know who is your writer, right? Those folks, reach out to them and they can help you at least, think that through so you can write that in your college statements or your personal insight questions or any other opportunity you have. Because if you were severely impacted, you need to include it. You need to. Yeah.
And Christina, I know for the Common App, for sure, for the Common Application, which I know is widely used throughout different institutions. It's definitely used by private institutions throughout the country, but there's also a lot of public universities that use that. The Common App has definitely included a specific question on how COVID/the pandemic has affected you and your family. Do not leave that question blank. To be honest with you, each and every single one of us has been affected in one way, shape, or form. So I would really encourage all students to answer that question in particular. And with that said, thanks, Christina. That was a lot of great, great tips that you provided. And Sergio, hopefully that answered your question. To answer another question, and feel free, like if there's any other questions that you have coming, or if you need to hop off the call, feel free to do so. Again, the recording will be shared with you all. But Megan is asking again, like my test has been canceled 3 times. Is it worth trying again for a later date? What is the latest month we should be taking it out or taking the test? So typically, it really depends on your college deadlines, actually. I would say, and Christina can correct me if I'm wrong, I would say for the UCs, if for whatever like miracle you could actually get the test or take the test, it's usually in December. That would be like the last accepted test dates. For like private universities and other institutions, you might want to double check, because if you're planning on applying like early decision or even early action, you might need testing sooner. But for the most part, December is usually the last month that you can take the test. But Megan, to your point, seriously, like if you're already like stressing out because it's already been canceled 3 times, I would really think about that and just be like, is it really worth my stress when I could like channel this energy somewhere else in my application? I would say that one specific point in your application where you should channel that testing energy is definitely like your grades and doing well in your classes. I think grades and GPA have always been important, but I think now so more than ever, you just want to focus and channel your energy there and making sure that you're doing your best, that you're trying your best. Because let's be real, like no one's perfect. If you're like that straight A student that's so used to getting that 4.0 and you just know like I'm not going to get that 4.0 this semester, quarter, trimester, whatever it is for you, I also don't want you to stress about it, because at the same time, you just have to do your due diligence and try your best, and seek out support and your resources. That's one thing that you could also add in your college applications. If you struggled in a class, you can talk about it. You can say like, look, like this is what was happening in this course and I just couldn't like, I couldn't necessarily concentrate because I had like 12 other people in my house. I had like 4 other people, doing digital learning online. Like you need to just provide reasoning behind that. So Megan, again, hopefully that kind of helps guide you a little bit better. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it from us. I mean, I know there was a lot shared, but I hope it was very helpful. And if you all have any other questions, we'll stay maybe like 5 minutes behind. But with that said, I just wanted to thank Christina for sharing her expertise with us today. Thank you so much, and for the wonderful vibes, and for dropping all of those wonderful links. Hopefully, yeah, thank you, Callista. Appreciate it. But thank you all so much for joining us today. And again, Christina, thank you so much for co-facilitating with me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And to all my procrastinators out there, get better. Get better. Just figure out what works for you, all right?
Yes.
Wishing you a wellness.
Yes. All right. Positive vibes for everyone. Woo. Oh. Thank you, Megan. Yeah, have a great rest.